Hey guys, welcome to the Startup Tank. We are live, the Startup Tank, where we bring the world's top climate and impact founders on to our esteemed panel of investors from across the globe to try to fund some of the great companies moving the world forward. The Startup Tank is brought to you by Forward VC. Forward.vc, that's in the number. We invest in companies that move the world forward, just like these guys, pre-seed and seed stage companies that are really doing big things on the climate and impact side of things. Today, we've got 6 incredible startups present to you guys. Before we get into that, though, I want to introduce our investor panelists. And even before we do that, we've got to say a special thank you to the sponsor of all of season 1 for the Startup Tank, Leva. Leva is the digital SPV for the modern era. You can set up 5 minutes, couple of clicks, you set up an SPV, you can do secondaries, set up syndicates, run a fund, and it's all significantly lower costs when you don't have all of the paperwork and fees of a lawyer. To check them out, visit forward.vc/Leva. Now I want to move into introducing some of the awesome investors that we've got planned for today. So this, as you may know, is our climate and impact edition. Every edition is going to be climate and impact now because we might as well only focus on the companies that really make the world better. So going forward, the Startup Tank, we're going to be focused purely on companies that are on the climate, the impact, the economic empowerment, the better health, mental health spaces. So if you're interested and you're a founder and you want to find out more, the startuptank.com. We'll have upcoming sessions June 6th, June 20th, and July 11th. Same time, 6 p.m. CET. If that's too much information, the startuptank.com. You can find out more about us and the investor syndicate we run. But now this has been a lot of preamble. I want to tell you about our incredible investor panel that we've got. So let's give you guys a little bit of a highlight and share a little overview of who we have here today. So today we've got 3 incredible investors that are going to be joining us. We've got Sven Meyer with 4 Impact. If you could name a fund kind of what it does, that's pretty much what it is. He'll give you a bit more of a rundown. We have Madeline Lawrence with Peak Capital, another great investor, and Ricardo Camarina with Teal Impact. Now, I wanted to give you guys a quick second to introduce yourselves a little bit, share more about who you are and what you do. Do you want to go first? Let's go with Madeline because we have a skew in the venture industry.
Well, happy to correct that skew. Nice to meet everyone. And thank you very much, Matt, for having me. I'm Madeline, so I'm head of DACH, which means Germany, Austria, and Switzerland for Peak. That being said, I do actually invest European-wide. I've been on the Peak team for about 3 years. Peak itself is a fund based in Amsterdam. We have an office in Stockholm and Berlin. We've been around for 14 years, so we're on our 4th fund. And I think what makes us different is from the beginning, it started with a group of founders coming together to invest together, thinking, we can be better investors than the ones we have. And that's still the same structure and philosophy that we have today. So we're only run by founders or people who have been in the founding seat. And also we only raise from founders, like the founders of Booking.com, but also more traditional companies or sort of mid-tier companies, a lot of which have, sustainability and impact high on their agenda. So happy to be here and happy to learn more.
Peak's one of the investors that we work pretty closely with. We try to send deals your way more. And this is all about bringing up the community. And speaking of doing that, Teal Impact, I'll let you take over next, Ricardo.
Hi, I'm Ricardo. My last name is hard to say, Camarina. A challenge for you, Matt. So I'm the typical entrepreneur who became an investor. And I actually joined Teal Impact as a business angel before, and then I moved into the managing team. We look for impact companies, and that being said, impact for us means that companies that the more they sell, the more positive impact they have in the world. So we are kind of sector agnostic, but the impact needs to be real. It's a pretty recent fund. It was actually a business angel fund before. It's now becoming a little bit more serious. We do pre-seed and seed stage in European companies.
And then Sven, impact's in the name as well. What do you guys do?
Yeah, impact is in the name indeed. And we weren't very creative in naming our fund, but I think the name sort of speaks for itself, which is good. We're an impact fund. Obviously, we invest in software and impact. So we do seed to Series A stage investments. We're based in The Hague, and we started investing in 2019. So on paper, we're quite a young fund. But we're, with our partners, we pack sort of decades of investing experience. They come from an investment banking background, so a bit of a different flavor as an investor as compared to maybe Peak on the other end. And yeah, sort of on the impact side, we look at, we have 3 sort of impact verticals, those being environment, inclusion, and health and well-being. And yeah, we invest in the Netherlands and looking strongly into the DACH and the Nordics as well. So if you're based in the DACH or the Nordics, you're going to see more of us hopefully very soon.
And then for myself personally, I lead Forward VC and Angel Syndicate, focus on pre-seed, seed stage, climate impact companies in Europe, North America, and Israel, where our deal flow is the strongest and where we've got great hubs when it comes to Startup Tank members. If you're interested in learning more, forward.vc. But we're here for the Startup Tank. We're here because we've got incredible founders that want to change the world, but they need some money to do that, especially these days. If people have seen the markets, things are taking a dive for the worst. But we've got companies who are building the future, so they've got big potential. If you haven't checked out the Startup Tank and this is your first time, be sure to hit the subscribe bell here on YouTube so that you never miss a thing. And you can also find out more, apply for future sessions, and all of that jazz at thestartuptank.com. It's pretty straightforward. We'd love to see you there. We'd love to see you at upcoming sessions, but now it's time to move on with the awesome companies. Now, to give everyone an overview of how things are going to work, we've been a little easy in the past in terms of time. That's been a problem. We're cutting now to hard 5 minutes. So all of the founders here, they're going to have exactly 5 minutes timed by my phone, which hopefully will function. And we're going to let them pitch it out so that at the end of the night, we choose a startup of the night. Our investors will go through, we'll give critiques and feedback on every founder. We'll set up hopefully some potential meetings. And then at the end of the night, we'll pick the startup of the night, the winner. Is everyone on board? Everyone ready? Well, then, as they say, the early bird gets the worm. Frankie was the first one here. Frankie is with Food Squared. I'm going to let her take the stage, and she should be able to turn on and present the screen now. Let's see it. Okay. Take it away, Frankie.
Okay. Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll start the timer now.
Okay. Hello, my name is Frankie and I am CEO of Food Squared. By 2050, the global population is estimated to grow by 2 billion people, and protein demand will rise by an estimated 70%. We have a problem. Where's this protein going to come from? Our food system is already broken, and animal-based protein requires 20 times more land and resources than plant protein, and is responsible for 16% of the world's global greenhouse gases. That's more than the entire transport sector globally. But it's also a huge opportunity if met sustainably. And by 2030, the total protein market is set to be worth $2.1 trillion. And the plant-based market is set to rise by 458%. And food brands are in a race to win market share. So how can we help these food brands meet this demand sustainably? Food Squared is a B2B ingredients company, and we upcycle food and drink manufacturing byproducts into next generation plant proteins. So who are we? Abby, our CTO, is a chemical engineer by trade and the first funded UK cellular agriculture bioengineer. Wes, our COO, has a background in operations and logistics at Waste Management, a US Fortune 200 company. And I built, scaled, and exited my previous food brand, which is stocked in supermarkets across the UK and North America. And with our combined expertise in food, operations, and biotech, we're perfectly placed to help food brands meet this growing opportunity. So what problem are we solving? Well, currently, manufacturers waste the potential of up to 40% of their input crops in byproducts. And with rising commodity costs and energy prices, this is not sustainable. And alternative protein companies rely mainly on wheat, pea, and soy. Imagine a world where they had an abundant source of hyperlocal plant-based proteins. So what's our solution? Well, Food Squared takes these byproducts, makes them into ingredients, and sells them to alternative food brands. We're looking at a range of byproducts and a range of applications in the food industry. Protein concentrates for plant-based meat and dairy, isolates for sports nutrition, and functional flours for baking, pasta, and healthy snacking. So I'm going to take an example from our recent pilot in the brewing industry. The brewer takes the barley, uses only the starch he needs for making beer, leaving a protein-rich byproduct, which is currently sold as low-value animal feed or biofuel. Food Squared diverts this protein-rich byproduct away from feed and fuel. And as we scale, we're using novel processing techniques and biotechnology to extract the protein and other valuable nutrients to sell for human consumption. So who else is in our space? Well, there are companies that are focused on upcycled ingredients and other companies that are focused on plant proteins. But Food Squared is the only company that's focused on making a range of upcycled ingredients for the plant-based food industry. So who are we working with? Well, we're leveraging our strong relationships in the food industry and already working with innovative food brands on developing healthy, low-carbon products. And we're working with major brewers, plant milk makers, and food manufacturers on finding a better solution for their byproducts. We have research projects in place with alternative protein innovation hubs ready to go. So what do we need? Well, we've already completed our first pilot with the byproduct of hemp oil, making a high protein flour. We have more pilots underway to improve, scale, and commercialize our products. We need £300,000 investment to take our product development to the next level with our key research partners and make our vision into a reality. So whether you're a buyer, a supplier, or an investor, please join our solution for a better future of food. Thank you for listening, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
With 11 seconds to go. Perfect shot clock there. Congratulations. That was phenomenal. I'm going to throw highlights on all the investors. You guys will have a chance to ask questions in a sec. The first question that I have, I think the most obvious one, is around intellectual property. So the process that you guys have actually developed, is that patented? How does it work? And are other people able to do this?
Okay, very good question. We actually have an IP roadmap in place. We're actually hoping to accrue this IP with our research partners at Wageningen University. So that is our next steps, is our proof of concept. But we can accrue IP all the way along from the processing all the way through the value chain.
And you're the only one that's currently doing this in this way through all three aspects of the model you discussed?
Yes, so there are people focused in areas, but we're the only people who are linking all the way through.
Okay. Do you have questions, Sven, Richard, Madeline? I want to open it up as well. I've got the timer going for questions for Frankie, and we can just throw them out there. I'll let you go first, Sven. Sound good?
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Frankie, for presenting. You already mentioned sort of biofuels and animal feed as current off-takers for these products. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my feeling is that those are huge markets. So you're in a bit of a price competition with biofuels and animal feed. Is that correct? So yes, I think the impact, I think that if the food can go for human consumption, you're going to command a better price. And I think as you go up the value chain, so at the moment, if you extract the proteins, they're worth a lot more than the entire byproduct. And I think that's where we'll find the value. I think so for number one, I think food should remain in human consumption it's rather inefficient to go via animals back into the food chain. Or I don't think it's a good way of using food to burn it for biofuel. There are better
there are better applications on purely impact, but also financially. We're aimed at extracting the valuable nutrients and getting better value for it.
May I ask, do you have any follow-on for that, Sven, or was that clear?
No, I think it was clear, and I like that you put impact into the mix there. So yeah, thanks.
Frankie, I was drawn with the fact that you said you've already exited your first, was it Foodtech company as well?
So no, it's actually an all-natural condiments company. So when I was raising my 2 young children, it was a kitchen table startup that started out with just selling a few here and there, but then we grew and we took on investment, and actually I decided to step back because I wanted to do something with more impact. So yeah, this I feel would be a better legacy than great condiments, although I do love condiments.
Gotta love a condiment, yeah. Okay, cool. Because from what I understand, I know that the food industry can be very particular. So I was curious, but now I understand your sort of previous experience was kind of a different angle in the food industry. If you reflect on yourself and the team that you have around you, where do you feel that your competitive advantage or your sort of, what do you know about the market that other people don't?
Okay, so I'm going to start with my perspective. As a food brand, I knew that the carbon impact of my products were not in the logistics, it's not in the packaging, it's actually in the ingredients of the food. That's where the carbon lies. So I know from talking to brands what's important for them. It's got to be functional, it's got to work. It's got to be cheaper nowadays, and it's got to be more sustainable. So these are the non-negotiables. So from that perspective, I feel rather than coming from a byproduct perspective, I'm coming from the buyer perspective. And Wes, with his operations and logistics background, is brilliant at being able to connect all the way from the manufacture all the way through to the bioengineering, which is where Abby's background is. So Abby looks at the byproducts as not as a single byproduct, but actually the component parts, which she can see the value in. And she knows how the functions and the applications in the food industry, because that's her background, is the bioengineering for the alternative protein markets. So I think between the three of us, we've kind of got this 360 perspective on what food brands want, how to get it there in the most efficient manner, and what are the best applications.
And where do you feel your blind spot might be, or where do we need a new key hire?
Oh, do you know what? We've actually taken on an intern this summer, which has been great, who's actually a food science intern. So they're looking at the regulatory side and the process, the actual sort of the food health and safety and the process and the regulatory side. And I think that is going to be really, really key. So he's excellent. And if we probably look to fill that space in time.
Cool. Just want to quickly say I love your voice, and I feel as though if, no matter what happens, you could always be a fantastic podcast radio host.
That means a lot. I've practiced so much today. I feel like I've barely got a voice left, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
congrats on the pitch. Any question from you, Ricardo, before we move on?
Yes, I do. So you just a very quick one. Your IP is 100% yours, because you mentioned university. Is it 100% yours?
Yes, it is.
Cool.
And that's why we worked with a patent company with IP, Kilburn Strode, with the IP roadmap. And so we've got that in place with our collaboration with Varnigan. And yes, it is all ours.
And just one last one. So about your business model. So you do buy waste from companies producing waste, and then you would transform it, and then you sell it. You transform it into final products, or you sell it to somebody else who then transforms it to final product?
That's a really good question. I think at first we'll be contract manufacturing, especially the mechanical, probably the lower value mechanical processes. But the IP will be able to accrue. We'll have moats around it on working with people in partnership. But I think the higher value is going to be beyond the functional flour stage, and when you're using the bioengineering to take the proteins out. So that is probably where we would be more focused on getting the high value nutrients and the proteins rather than just the functional flour stage.
Yeah, but you do get the proteins, then what do you do with them? The business model, what is it? You get
right,
a
yes,
company
so
producing food, right?
Yes, so sorry. Yeah, so we'll be looking, as I was saying, that there's different levels and different applications. So the plant-based, the protein concentrates would be used for the milk. The question I'm answering is the meat and the plant-based meat and dairy industry, because there'll be sort of that there'll be a certain level, they have to be extrudable, and there'll be a certain level of protein that will be applied to them. And then the isolates, which will be a higher level of protein, would be sports nutrition, but they'd have to be soluble. So we're looking at a number of different byproducts and a number of different applications. But we're more focused, we're looking for what the alternative protein industry needs, and then finding the right byproduct rather than just upcycling byproducts, because we realize that the alternative protein industry needs to be more compelling. It needs to be cost parity. It needs to make better products, and you can make better products with more and better ingredients.
Answered. Good.
Awesome. Thanks then, Frankie. That was a great presentation, a great pitch. It's clearly a meaningful company.
Thank you.
People want to learn more, it's foodsquared.earth. You can find Frankie there or in Google, or of course. Now we're going to move on to our next startup of the night. So the next startup of the night is one that I'm pretty excited about what they're doing. I've been speaking with the founder for a while now and got introduced to him. It's based in Israel, Dots Soil. They're revolutionizing fertilizer management. It's a big problem. I'll let Rafi tell you about it so I don't steal his thunder. Rafi, you are up.
Get out of mute first. That always helps. And start in a second. Here we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Sorry about that. Okay, start. Thanks for being here. Good evening. I'm Rafi Levy, and I'm the CEO of Dots. Dots is the company offering real-time, continuous, and affordable soil nitrate data. Before we get into that, let's look at the problem itself. There's no real-time nitrate data at the soil level, at the root level today. So the common practice to ensure yields is overdose. In fact, if we look at the market values, we're talking of a $200 billion fertilizer market with a 40% waste factor, making it an $80 billion a year problem. Now, this problem has three directions, three verticals. The farmers lose $80 billion a year. The environment absorbs the damage and the suffering of $80 billion worth of contamination. And eventually, to drink the water we drink, the municipalities rehabilitate the water, investing just about the same amount of money on cleaning the water from the damage we caused. Now, why is that? Because the three vectors of technology available today have shortcomings. I'll start at the bottom. The manual sampling is the best method. It's precise, it's accurate, it's scientific, but it means a man in the loop. You have to go to the field, take a sample, do the test, get a result. So you cannot do it on large-scale farming, and you cannot have a continuous data stream on this vertical. The visual analysis is the second best method, but it's too late. It's a bit of an autopsy, because when you see a damage, you know that you had a deficit a few days back. You have no idea what's happening now. And the most common method is an estimation method. People measure a whole bunch of soil parameters, salinity, electroconductivity, temperature, etc., and they try to deduct or assume what the fertilizer level caused this equation that they see, but it's an estimation at best. Dots developed an end-to-end solution, starting with a Dots developed and patented soil sensor, which collects nitrate data, where in the cloud, we fuse our data with third-party data and third-party sensors to give a full dashboard to the user, and the farmer or the agronomist in that case. Our next step will be not only to give the dashboard, but also to give, I would call it a cruise control, where the farmer will tell us what he wants, and our system will ensure he gets it. How do we do it? Well, I'll start with the IP. We have 4 registered patents on 3 components of the system: a unique siphoning mechanism, which we patented and developed, a unique electro-optical flow cell where we measure the solution we extract from the soil, and we measure absorbency of the solution. And the most important component of our system is the algorithm which we have, which is patented in 2 separate patents, to give us the differentiation between all contaminants in the soil pore water to the nitrate itself. In fact, what we say is that we've developed the ECG of the ground soil. And we shifted from a finger on the pulse technology to an ECG technology. Now, this is the real deal. This is the graph of nitrate dynamics in the soil at the root level. Now, as you see, it's highly dynamic. The problem is not only that it's dynamic and you cannot predict what you'll have today based on a measurement yesterday. The problem is that when you ask an agronomist or a farmer, where would you want to be? He'd say, please put me here. And as you can see here, this is a clear picture of the overdose. Now, this is common practice and this is worldwide. Now, we took it one step further and we controlled the fertilization, and we managed to contain the fertilizers exactly where they should be. Most importantly, our sensor is a 3-depth sensor. And most importantly, what we proved is that beneath the root zone, in the orange bar here, you can see 0 nitrate, meaning everything we put in the ground was uptaken by the roots, 0 leaching to groundwater. Now, there are lots of competition out there. I'm not going to go through this whole table, but there are people doing this. I'll tell you one thing. If we look at the clusters of solutions today, on the top left, you have the cluster which gives you exact, precise nitrate measurements, but they need a man to do them. It's not automated, it's not continuous. On the bottom right, you have good agricultural agtech companies giving you continuous agtech data, but mostly irrigation data. None of them deal with the fertilizer levels. How did we do it? Well, to be honest, we didn't. It was done by our founders before we were even born. We're founded based on 7 years of research with $500,000 of academic and funding and government investments. The 3 founders you see here did this for 7 years, and I managed to join them about a year back when the 4 of us formed the company. In the 6 months we've been running, we raised the funds, raised our first team, or recruited our first team, which is non-founders, and started going on the first producible generation product, and already are into field trials with it. The company is not a pure R&D company, even though it started with R&D. We see markets, we see sales, and we know where we're going in this sense. So as you can see here, the company started off in R&D, but it's going to shift the focus towards marketing and sales as time goes by. Our roadmap is to complete the product development by the end of this year, including multiple field trials. We presently have 2, we plan to reach 10. And towards the end of the year, reach the first contracts in the US and expand to US and Europe over 23 and 24. How are we going to do it? Well, I'll just recap on the market for a minute. It's a $200 billion market. 80 billions are wasted yearly. We believe we can easily reduce 50% of the waste, making it a $40 billion market. Our business is a SaaS or a DaaS business and not a sensor selling business. And our structure is such that we are going to take anywhere from 10 to 20% of the potential savings. Even if we take only a 10% savings, we're talking of a $4 billion per year market share. How are we going to do it? Well, although
I got to stop you, Rafi. 5 minutes.
Really?
Either way, it was an awesome pitch. No, don't worry. How much are you guys raising, just for people listening? The last couple of details.
We're raising $5 million. Which will mostly go to complete the product, launch sales. Some of it will go for initial production because we know we're going to have to give it away for the first season or 2 to prove the concept to reluctant farmers. But once they see it, we see it in Israel in the first trials we did. Once they see it, it's a sticky product. They don't want to stop. They don't want to leave. When we finished the trial in Israel and we said, thank you, we're going away with the system, the answer was, what, are you crazy? I need the data. So the attitude is once they see the value, it's an addictive product. It's a sticky product. They don't want to cut it off because they must use the data.
It's also stuck in the ground at that point. So it's a little bit of an effort to take out. So my question for you, I've been involved with Dots for a while now, learning more about the company. In transparency, it's a company that we're looking into with Forward VC. So, one of my questions for you is, what initially pulled you into the team? What initially got you here? Because you have an operator background.
Well, I have 4 years of engineering and mostly engineering management background. I started my engineering career in 1982 after graduation, and I've been an engineer and mostly an engineering manager all my life. What got me here is the fact that this is the first product I saw, which is literally a game changer in the contamination game that we're playing to manufacture food, because no one is thinking of the environment when it comes to food. We're thinking of the environment when it comes to everything around us, gasoline and this and that. But when it comes to food, we think of people first. This product is a game changer. In 15, 20 years, as Frankie also said, there will not be enough food in the world because there's not enough land to grow it on and because there's not enough resources of fertilizers in the world to give enough food to the number of people that will be here in 20 or 30 years. If you use half the fertilizer, you can definitely use more and more lands and generate more and more food with the resources we have today.
And in terms of go-to-market, you mentioned agronomists and channel partnerships there. How
Yes.
do you see that rolling out? It's not something where you've seen a lot of large Agtech IoT companies scale quickly.
I agree with that because I think most of them were trying to look at your fingernails and not at your heart. Most of them went and looked under the flashlight where it's easy. Measuring moisture in the soil is easy. Assuming how much you have to irrigate is easy. These guys that I joined, and again, I can brag because it's not me, it's them. These guys broke their heads against the wall for 7 years and they cracked the enigma, which is a challenge running for the last 40 years of how the hell does one measure nitrate in the soil? There's no answer today except this one yet. I'm sure there'll be competition, but presently they're the icebreakers. And that's one of the reasons we feel that we're going to grow much faster than any Agtech. And we're not going to go it alone. I can go back to my slides, but we're not going to go it alone. We're going to go with channel partners. We're going to go with other Agtech companies, which have hundreds and thousands of clients, and give them the overlay of nitrate to their irrigation decisions they make today. Now, the overlay of the nitrate is the game changer, because if they cut 15% of the water cost, it's nice. But if they cut 40% of the fertilizer cost, it's critical. There are farmers in the States today which stopped growing because of fertilizer costs. We can bring them back into the game if we cut the costs in half.
Are your pricing models based off of current fertilizer prices or 2019, 2020 prices?
All the numbers you saw in my presentation are 2019 prices when fertilizers were $660 per ton. Today, they almost reached $1,800 per ton.
Thanks to Putin. Any questions from the rest of the investor panel for Rafi?
Yeah, I do. It seems like there's a lot that you definitely have your opinions on the market, and I'm a new person to this market. I haven't looked super closely into the fertilizer space, and you've already highlighted a little bit of people taking the easy way out or sort of looking for quick solutions rather than putting in the hard weight. And I'm curious, what do you believe is the most misunderstood thing about the market that you're in?
It's not, I wouldn't say misunderstood, but I would say that most Agtech companies think of this as any other consumer product where they can you get a good iPhone, you pitch good, you have a good commercial on TV and you sell. Farmers are a combination of extremely sophisticated people and extremely conservative people. They're not going to buy. They're going to buy from people they trust, and they don't trust ag companies because they weren't around 15 years back. They trust their dealers, they trust their channels, they trust their advisors, because the farmer today is the great-grandson of the original farmer, and the advisor today is the great-grandson of his great-grandfather's advisor. These guys run in the family for ages, and these families are intermarried and interconnected because they're in the sector. I have to go through the channels. I cannot go directly to farmers because there's no chance of bypassing tradition and bypassing relations, which have run for 60 years. So I must reach them through their channels, through their trusted partners. And I think that many Agtech companies took a few years to realize that. I'm not saying something new. Most Agtech companies today are trying this channel, but some of them have been running for 6 or 7 years until they figure this one out. And I'm just riding on this wave of their understanding.
Thank you, Rafi. If I may chime in with a question from my end here. So first
Yes,
of all, I really like how you connect the problem to your solution. So that was a very clear link there. One quick question on the product and then one on commercialization. On the product, are there any other data layers that you use that sort of flow into the software solution that the farmer sees apart from nitrates, apart from the data that you gather with the sensor?
Yes, because of the time shortage, I wasn't elaborate enough, but yes, our system, our dashboard is a full dashboard. Everything you get from other companies plus nitrate, not only nitrate. Nitrate is meaningless standalone. That's one thing. And the other thing is farmers, as I said before, they want a simple life. They don't want confusion. You give them 5 systems they have to go through and you give them 20 data points, they'll get confused. They want a simple yes, no decision. Should I fertilize or not? Should I irrigate or not? Yes, no, black, white, simple. Not because they're stupid people, they're smart people, but they're loaded people. They got a lot of work, they got a lot of things to do and manage. They need a simple yes, no, and not an equation to solve. We give them a yes, no.
Got it. Is there any risk then from your end of becoming too dependent on the availability of other data, non-nitrate data?
No, because we have non-nitrate sensors as part of our system, off-the-shelf sensors. We didn't develop them, we integrated them. And the other data we need is weather. I don't think weather.com or Weather Underground or any of these will go away in the next decade. So whether you can buy off the shelf again as data.
Yeah. You alluded to grant funding briefly. I'm wondering how dependent were you in the last couple of years on grant funding, and how do you see yourself sort of weaning yourself off of grant funding and becoming a pure commercial company in the coming years?
We started off as a commercial company. The grant funding was done for the academic research within the university. The minute we set up the company, we are detached from grants. We can approach the European Horizon 2021 or whatever. We have endless requests to join other parties, European parties in this, but it's extremely time consuming. And I honestly believe that grants is a bit of a lottery at this point in time because we don't have traction and we don't have proof in Europe. When we do, I think grants will come easy because it's critical. In Germany last year, they slapped 2 years back, they slapped 4 billion euro fine on Germany. The European community slapped a 4 billion euro fine on Germany because of over nitrate usage in agriculture. I think every regulator would love to have this monitor to show zero leaching so they get off his back, and every user as well.
Thanks, Rafi. Very clear.
As one quick follow-up before Ricardo gets his shot. Rafi, how often are farmers fertilizing? How often do they need to see where their levels are at and how much needs to be applied?
Farmers which irrigate mostly use irrigation systems as fertigation systems. They have a mixture and they fertilize through the irrigation water. That's 20% of the world, but it's 54% of the fertilizer used in the world, because that's the advanced crops, I would say, and the controlled crops. So 20% of the world, 54% of the fertilizer used is used through irrigation systems. They fertilize every time they irrigate, unless the system tells them you don't need to. Well, presently there's no such system. They take a 1 week sample, they take a sample once a week, and then they set their mixture ratio for the entire week, which could be 5 or 7 or 35 irrigation cycles with fertilizer inside based on one reading. When they use dots, as you saw in the graph that I showed that we contained it into the green zone, for every irrigation/fertilization cycle, there's a data-driven decision, yes or no. And that's how we managed to save so much. We saved 60% in a controlled trial of growing wheat. We saved 60% of the recommendation of the fertilizer and seed company when we grew it in a controlled system. 60% savings, but that's controlled test. In the fields, I estimate 40 to 50% savings.
Still a pretty big deal when you basically have zero margins like farmers do. Ricardo, do you have any questions for?
Yes, Rafi? I do. Very, very fast, because Rafi, you did a great pitch. You clearly believe in what you're selling, and all the other guys already done most of the questions. You mentioned this was a university project. So does the university own any IP on this stuff? on the company? What's the ownership structure? And I'll just do the other question that follows through, and you can answer both of them. I think you mainly answer all the product questions. I just want to know, what are the major complications that you see going forward? What are the problems that you may foresee for DOTS?
Okay, I'll start with the IP or the ownership structure. The university holds about 10% of the company. I say about because they started with 13, and when we got the first investment, they went down by 20, and I didn't do the math in my head. They own today about 10% of the company, no voting rights, no board members. The IP is registered on the university external company today, where the contract is that I have perpetual, irrevocable license to use, exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable license to use. And in the next round of funding, the ownership is transferred from the university to DOTS. The reason it's still with the university is because of the risk of losing it, because in case we don't raise funds, they don't want to lose the IP. But it's going to be, the IP is owned by DOTS on the next round of funding. That's for that. And I'm sorry, I lost the other question
what are the major problems you foresee in the future of the company? What would happen that would...
Look, I'll tell you. This is a discussion I have with Matt, if he allows me to say it. In today's market, the ambience is shitty, if I may say so, and everybody is trying to hunker down. But I believe that when there's a mudslide, the diamonds that were buried in the mud suddenly shine because they're exposed to the sun. And I believe that because we're not a nice-to-have product like a 3D cloth application, but we're a life support system to agriculture, I don't see a problem in raising funds because, again, we are there to save, not to have people buy more on the net. We're there to save and bring farmers back to the business when they're shut down now because of fertilizer problems. The problems I do see are two. One is reluctancy, and two is the timeline. Because if I convince a farmer how good I am, and even if he says, come tomorrow, the first time he's going to be happy is in 4 months because he has to run a full cycle, a full season, and depends on what he grows. It might be 6 months. He has to run a full cycle, a full season until he says, wow. Now, this first wow will bring 1,000 clients in the next round. But the time lapse in agriculture is seasonal. And it's extremely a slow developing market in that sense. I think it's going to be a snowball effect because if I have 10 projects in 6 months, which I plan to do, and 100 projects by next summer, I'll have thousands. The escalation is non-linear. It's asymptotic because of the need, not because I'm such a good salesman, because of the need. When people hear of this, they'll stand in line to get it because it's going to save them up to 50% of 30% of the production cost. Now, can you imagine 15% from expense to profit in a thin margin environment of agriculture?
I thought the fertilizer was 15% of the operational costs. Did I get that wrong?
30 to 46 in wheat. $200 out of $420 production costs, $202, that's the number today, is fertilizer. In corn, it's 36% roughly. In the variety of crops,
because the numbers have doubled.
30 to 46% of the variable production cost is fertilizer. If I cut 15% of that, then I'm sorry, 50% of that, then this goes directly from an expense line to a profit line with no more land, no more manpower, no more seeds, and no more water. Just expense deleted, profit gained. Full stop.
Full stop. I think that's a good spot to wrap this one up and move on to the next company. Rafi, thanks so much for presenting.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks everybody as well. We're going to take a quick timeout here to tell you a little bit more about the Startup Tank. So the Startup Tank is brought to you guys by Forward VC, our early stage syndicate that invests in pre-seed and seed stage climate and impact companies, just like these ones that are moving the world forward. If you want to find out more, forward.vc. So the number 4, ward.vc. We invest in companies that move the world forward, and it never helps to have your last name as an ego boost in the URL, forward.vc. And the Startup Tank is brought to you by Leva. If you are setting up an SPV, if you run a fund or are a syndicate lead like us, or if you're a startup looking to raise some money for your own company and you don't want to have all the extra fees, well, Leva can be a great solution for you. If you visit forward.vc/Leva, you can find out what a digital SPV looks like, i.e. one that's lawyer-free, takes a few clicks, has all of that advantages of an online system where you can do things yourself, fast, easy, cheap, and ultra scalable. Forward.vc/Leva if you want to find out more about the sponsor for all of season 1, Leva. And now moving on with the program, I want to move things over to number 3 in our lineup. How about we go with last week's reigning champion, Nicholas and Voltiris. Nicholas, welcome back to the program.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be back at the Startup Tank. Can you hear me well before I start pitching?
Yes, and I'm going to start you on the clock. Nicholas is another company that we're looking at, and what they're doing with Voltiris is it's pretty game changing. Nicholas, you are on the clock. Let's go.
Thank you very much. So yes, so super excited to be here today. I'm going to present to you Voltiris and how we develop color optimized solar modules for agriculture and more specifically for greenhouses. So by 2050, we need to feed about 10 million people globally. In order to do that, greenhouses are going to be a key component of agriculture to get there. So greenhouses have a lot of different benefits. So for example, you have an increased yield, you can produce locally producers that otherwise would have to travel, you can use less pesticides, use less water in the greenhouses. And of course, in regard of climate change, you can also better control the climate of your crops. So some analysts, because of that, estimate that the surface of greenhouses is going to explode over the next few years. And some people say that it's even going to grow by a factor of 17 over the next 30 years. However, greenhouses have a huge problem. And so for that, I would like you to meet Jan. Jan is a greenhouse owner. He has a greenhouse of about 5 hectares. He produces cherry tomatoes. The big problem of Jan is that he spends about 1.5 million Swiss francs in energy costs. Those costs are, of course, very high. Today, it's 45% of his operating cost. That has increased by 20 points of percentage in comparison with 2 years ago. Those costs remain still very uncertain and volatile. For gas and electricity with the current energy crisis, no one knows what the price will be tomorrow. And Jan also emits a lot of CO2. His activities are not sustainable and he needs to change that. And so if today Jan wants to combine crop production and electricity generation, there are a few solutions that already exist. However, there are still unmet needs from the existing solutions. So none of the existing solutions fully understand and fully provide to Jan what he needs. So some of them are going to reduce the growth of his crops. Some of them are going to produce electricity when Jan doesn't need it. There is also very often a very low return on investment on the existing solutions. And also some of these solutions require to have legal authorization, so regulatory permission to install solar modules with the greenhouses. And so here comes Voltiris. Basically what we do with Voltiris is that we develop what we call color optimized solar modules that we protected with 2 patents. Basically, the way that those modules work is that we have a technology that is called spectral filtering that is adapted to crops. Concretely, we're going to filter the sunlight. All the light components that crops need to grow, we give it to the crops. So that's mostly red and blue. And all the rest, all the waste from the sunlight is filtered out and concentrated on a solar cell that is going to generate electricity. So thanks to that, also the fact that we're inside the greenhouse, we have an easy installation that doesn't require any regulatory permission. And we have a superior ROI thanks to the high PV efficiency that is protected by our 2 patents. The first one is on how much electricity we generate. And the second one is on the 2-axis solar tracking that is going to make our solar day longer and then our output of electricity also longer. So thanks to all of this, we're able to offer to Jan the possibility to better control his cost, to improve his profitability by up to 300%, and also improve his sustainability because we're able to reduce his carbon emissions by about 70%, thanks to the renewable energy that is going to substitute the gas that he uses in his greenhouse. Concretely, it means that we can cover with our modules up to 35% of the surface of the greenhouse of Jan. Globally, this is a huge market. There are a lot of greenhouse owners like Jan. We estimate that there are about 12,000 greenhouse owners globally. Most of them, or not most of them, but a large part of them are in the Netherlands. So about 16% of the market, around 2,000 greenhouse owners are in the Netherlands. And this is a market that is growing a lot. As I said before, we expect that the surface of greenhouse is going to explode over the next few years. So this is growing at about 10% per year. Given the scale and the size of the greenhouses, for Voltiris working with only a limited number of greenhouse owners, we're able to generate quite substantial revenues. So by 2027, we aim to work with around 150 clients and to generate like this about 110 million in revenues. Just to highlight this part around how a few greenhouses, a few customers translate into a large opportunity. So today we're in discussions and in preparation of 4 paid pilots. Those 4 paid pilots, they will be done with customers, with clients that have a combined surface of greenhouse of around 30 hectares. 30 hectares is huge, right? I think we don't necessarily imagine the scale of those greenhouses. You have to use a bicycle usually when you're traveling or when you're going inside the greenhouse. But those 30 hectares will translate into a full opportunity of around 40 million Swiss francs. And also following up also on what Rafi was saying just before. So those greenhouse owners, they're very often grouped also in traditional ways, in cooperative, in associations. So having a successful pilot with one of them, you can very often go into the network and expand within their network. So the opportunity is much bigger. Regarding our team, we're a team of 3 people.
Got to cut you off, Nicholas. I'm sorry, you ran out of time in the
No
tank.
problem.
We're going much more extreme with the 5 minutes than last time when you won the session. But
No worries.
A quick couple follow-up questions to help you with finalizing, I think, what you needed to say. What is the business model behind what Voltiris is doing? This is a huge upfront capital cost for greenhouses.
Yeah, that's a good question. So today, the way it works is like it's for regular solar panels. So we go to the greenhouse owners and then we sell and we install the solar panels within their greenhouses. However, now we're working on a few models to accelerate the adoption, right? So having payment solutions that reduce the financial risk, the financial burden for greenhouse owners are going to help us also capture quicker a larger share of the greenhouse and enable a quicker adoption of our solution. So basically having a leasing solution or a solar contracting solution with an energy provider.
And then in terms of the actual business itself, as you scale this up, you mentioned a little bit about your go-to-market, but mostly it's been through the pilots that you guys have acquired. How do you plan to acquire more pilots? And what do you see the long-term kind of pilot sales process looking like in terms of start to finish?
So I think we're focusing now on the pilots, mostly also to ensure the technical validation and also ensure that we have the first strategic partners that are onboarded. Afterwards, and also looking at how other greenhouse solutions have been adopted within greenhouses. I think the greenhouse owners in the Netherlands are extremely sophisticated, extremely up to date also in terms of technology. So if there is a new technology that is successful for greenhouse and also looking at how CHP has been adopted in the Netherlands, it should go quite quickly also. It's just that we need first to prove to people that it works and also to alleviate the risk of the innovation that we're bringing. But afterwards, what we're planning to do really concretely to reach out to people is going via associations of growers, via energy providers, so the people that they're already helping or smoothing the energy transition with those greenhouse owners. It's also going via the people that manufacture the greenhouses, so we have good connections also with those players, etc. So afterwards, we have what we call network enablers, so nodes within the ecosystem that are going to help us access and reach the greenhouse owners.
Understood. And in terms of once you reach the greenhouse owners, is there any type of credits, system, tax breaks, et cetera, that greenhouses can then apply and up the positive ROI, so to speak, on a governmental basis?
Yes. So at the moment, it's something that we're working on in the sense that at the moment I'm looking at what would be the subsidies that we could get in regards of also carbon credits or renewable contracts, for example. I think at least, for example, in Switzerland, when you install solar panels, you have part of the subsidy. So you could have about 30% of the cost of your solar panels that is subsidized. In the Netherlands, it's a bit different. It's more that the energy that you're going to sell to the grid, you have a minimum price that is also subsidized. So it's things that we're looking at, and that also exists in each of different countries. It's just that it's going to be dependent on the specifics of the markets.
Okay. Sven, Ricardo, Madeline, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So, I mean, Matt, the questions you asked were very important, and we see this a lot in the Agtech space. I mean, selling to farmers or selling to people in agriculture is quite a challenge. So you need to know how to sort of speak their language. So it's good that you're aware of that, Nicolas. And my question to you, more out of curiosity, I suppose, in the long term, do you see any other applications of the technology that you've developed? Any other sectors that might become interesting?
Of course. So I didn't get the chance to talk about this, about our vision, right? But today, I would say today we're focusing on greenhouse owners because that's where the biggest burning platform exists. However, conceptually, what we're doing is applicable to a lot of different industries or applications. So in extension in agriculture, we could go to plastic greenhouses, open crops, private solutions. However, we're seeing, and we're only at the beginning of the discussion, but we could also have applications, for example, in fish farming or also in buildings, right? It's just, we have to start somewhere. Our technology works for glass greenhouses, and we really believe that that's also where the biggest need or the biggest pain point is at the moment, and that could solve.
And if I may add on just one question on the product, is there anything in particular that you're very proud of? Any part of the product or the patent that you like to present?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting with the product is that we've talked with multiple experts within the ecosystem and the industry, and people are very often surprised by our take and how innovative it is, right? So because it's a module really with those two components. So you have on one side the mirrors that are going to filter the sunlight, and then the other side the solar panel, and it's also concentrated, right? And so the way we do it, and the magic in the product is that all the components that we used are common and are used at scale in other industries. So it ensures that we have quite a low cost already from day one. It's just that we have our magic sauce, our secret sauce within some of the components. And I think that's also what we're proud of. And that makes really the combination of having a low cost and a high yield in terms of electricity. The other patent, the second patent, is also quite interesting because this is the solar tracking. And very often, solar tracking is not used in solar because it's too expensive. Because if you have to move a solar panel on two axes, it takes a lot of energy to do, and it's very expensive also to create the solar tracking. We've been able to innovate because of the constraints that we have inside the greenhouse, because of the fact that we're also playing, I would say, with a light module that is quite flexible, that we're protected from the elements within the greenhouse. And that's also something I think that is quite groundbreaking in that sense, and people very often don't expect it. And so I think we're very proud of, whenever we talk with experts, again, with greenhouse manufacturers, they tell us that they met a lot of photovoltaic companies for greenhouses, but they've never seen a take like this at the problem. And so that's also why they're interested.
Very nice. Thanks for that.
I saw you're raising ultimately for your pre-seed to sort of validate a few of the first assumptions. What is the sort of biggest hypotheses that you're operating on right now?
That's a good question. So I would say the basic hypothesis, and the one that most, I would say, of our company relies on, is that there is no agronomical impact of our modules on the crops, right? So we can put our modules on top of crops, and we're going to have no negative impact on the yield. And this, so we're testing it now with an agronomical study in Switzerland. It's co-funded by the government, for example. And this, for example, from the first results we have, it has been validated. And so, of course, now we're going to need to validate it in a bigger setup with clients, and also with the Wageningen University in the Netherlands. I would say this is kind of the biggest assumption and the biggest part that we need to validate, but I think we're on good track. Then there are other elements more related to our costs, and more also in regards of, for example, the installation of our modules. So today we're taking some assumptions that are quite conservative, but still, I mean, we're going to need to test that, and we're going to need to work with energy providers and solar panel installers to install our modules in the greenhouses, because it's still quite new. The way we do it is inside the greenhouse, below the roof, right? So there's still a bit of novelty here. And I think that's also what we need to test, and also why we want to have this large scale pilot during which we're going to be able to really see how it works.
Anything else, Madeline?
Does that answer your question?
It does. It's a big assumption, so I'm very excited to see how the validation goes.
It is on paper, but I mean, we're de-risking quite a bit. I mean, from the beginning, we started, I would say 18 months ago, we started discussing with the greenhouse owners. The first draft, the first mock-up, we presented it to greenhouse owners to get their feedback. And they already, I think it was interesting, because the first solution we had, they really laughed. They said, no, this is never going to work, forget it. And we've kept on iterating with them, and we kept on working with them closely. So there are elements, I mean, we still need to have tangible proof with, I would say, scientific method that proves what we're working on and really shows results. But we're quite confident that we'll get there, because we have a lot of different, arrays of proofs that already prove part of it.
So following actually your answer on that one, my question was about the installation overhead and costs, because you mentioned on the business model, you're looking at other ways of selling the stuff and probably financing and leasing. You could look at leasing. You could actually sell it as tech as a service or hardware as a service. But I'm guessing the installation overhead and costs will be very expensive, because you do one project at a time. It's not something out of the box, is it? Each project needs to be thought thoroughly.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more about your business model? What's the plan here?
Yeah. So what's interesting is that the magic also behind our product is that it unlocks a huge surface within greenhouses. So in average greenhouse is 5 hectares. So it means that in an average greenhouse, standard greenhouse, we can install up to 17,000 solar modules. With 17,000 solar modules, this is a huge solar project, and then the installation costs and all the fixed costs that you also have in solar installations go down quite quickly also because of the scale. What we're doing is that we're working here with energy providers in Switzerland to also review all of our assumptions, also in terms of the installation, how much it's going to cost, how much time people are going to spend on the cost. But basically, to give you an idea, about, I would say 40%, 50% of our costs are installation related costs. And already with this, we'll be able to be quite competitive for the installations. I don't know if it fully answers this question. I think it's only the second part of your question. I think you also had a question more in regards of the business model and how we want to get there, right? So I mean, in terms of the business model, I think the point for us is really to sell the biggest projects with the greenhouses and really then enable the greenhouse owners to have also the payment model so that we capture directly quite a large part of their greenhouse.
You say payment model, you mean financing?
Yes, funding. Ricardo, I think you're on mute. I don't know if.
Sorry, I thought I was talking. But is the plan to sell this to the owners of the greenhouses, or is the plan to lease them this or rent them the product, and then you could update the product? So I wanted to know more about the economics of this stuff. What is one-off sale and then have maintenance fees, or do you want to have recurring revenue and do this as a different kind of product?
Yeah, so that's what we're looking at, I would say, as the first stage. So selling them directly, having basic maintenance for 2 to 5 years. We need to decide exactly on that, and then the rest we would sell the maintenance that is on top. On top of this, I think also that as soon as we enter the greenhouse, we can also install some IoT that is related also to the greenhouse. So for example, greenhouse owners want always to have the most light transmission inside the greenhouse. So they always want to have their glasses that are clean. Thanks to our modules below the roof, we could say directly when we don't produce as much electricity as we should. So maybe it's time to clean the greenhouse, etc. So those are elements that will come on top. Specifically on the leasing. So today, because we wouldn't have the balance sheet as day one, we wouldn't be able to get the leasing ourselves. However, that's also why we're working closely with energy providers already here in Switzerland, and we're in contact with the ones in the Netherlands to start developing also energy contracts and solutions there. On the second part regarding the business model. So one way is to sell to the greenhouse owners that already exist. They already have a greenhouse and we retrofit our solution there. Another way, and also I mentioned that we talk with the greenhouse manufacturers. The best way for us to sell a project would be to already go with the greenhouse manufacturers. When someone creates a greenhouse, they create the list of the elements that they want inside the greenhouse, and we install directly our solution. So it's already accounted within the purchase of the greenhouse, and then we directly sell the full greenhouse. In terms of cost is also low. So these are elements that we're looking at. It's just we have to start somewhere. So now I would say the basic models that we sell directly, self-financing, but then we're going to add the array of other payment solutions or other financing solutions, and also of other services that would complement our modules.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicholas. Then we are halfway through tonight's Startup Tank, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If this is your first time, thestartuptank.com for more details to apply and all of that jazz. But we need to move on because we've got some other incredible startups who are going to be presenting. Next up, I'd like to hand things over to Palami. Palami's here with Bomway, which is a bit like Trustpilot for sustainable and fair labor sourcing. Palami, take it away.
Thanks, Matt. Just give me a second to share my screen. Yeah, can you hear me well?
Loud and clear. You are on the clock. Bomway, what are you guys doing?
All right. Hi, everybody. As Matt said, I'm Palami, founder of Bomway. It's a B2B trust pilot of fair wages and SME manufacturers in lifestyle. But before we begin, let me talk a bit about my background. So with an MSc in environmental policy from LSE, London School of Economics, I have been an internet entrepreneur for about 6 years. I created a marketplace like Etsy-like marketplace earlier, and where mainly the sourcing was from SME manufacturers and unique brands, which was on its way to 30% month on month when the pandemic hit. It was this experience that showed me the importance of creating transparent and sustainable supply chains. So with understanding of online sellers and buyers' pain points, I'm now getting into solving pressing problems faced by businesses seeking online suppliers. So while online sourcing has eased businesses' ability to get suppliers faster and at a better rate, but then it makes due diligence extremely challenging. So as a brand, you would want to know who you're buying from, where you're based, and in what labor conditions. Lack of transparency is acute in the lifestyle industry. So that lady with a lost limb is actually a victim of Bangladesh's clothing manufacturing unit, which had bad labor conditions. So as a brand, your reputation is paramount. And to retain the favor of your customers, you must now prove who you are dealing with. And 90% of the marketplaces, don't digital producers. Like, have you seen it? So we at Bomway, as said earlier, are creating a B2B trust pilot of fair wages and SME manufacturers or wholesalers in lifestyle. We are answer to brands' efficient supply chain management. Our mission is to make procurement authentic with respect to wage labels, categories, and comparing ratings and reviews of these sellers given by buyers. So our MVP is going to be live today, but it's in beta and has been built by my co-founder. Meanwhile, we have verified 6,000 fair wages suppliers who are already onboarded with us. We have 50,000 unverified suppliers, but then they can claim their profiles, and then we start with the onboarding and verification process. We currently have sellers from South Asia, UK, Turkey, and 1 or 2 from US and Eastern European countries, and that happened pretty much organically and through word of mouth and other social channels. So online B2B market in UK and US is around $230B, but then out of which share of online big chains is around $92 billion. Our share of market is predicted to be 0.03% and $28 million by the end of 2026. And we plan to launch with a subscription model in Q4. Can you hear me? Because my internet is saying unstable. Am I?
Yep. Yeah, we hear you. You're good.
Yeah, and so the subscription model, we plan to launch with that. with as low as $25 for the sellers for the visibility and other services that we will be providing. Within 1.5 years of operations, we do plan to also launch with a commission model of just like 5 to 8% on each transaction. Currently, we are getting requests and RFQs from UK, US and Italy, and we also recently got one London celebrity designer for like manufacturers and then like certain kind of fabric and the production. So as you can see, the competition, like there's companies like Sarai and FourSource, which are doing something similar but in fashion, but then again not with ratings and reviews. And I don't think like has anyone heard of FourSource and Sarai for that matter. Anchor Store is somewhat a competitor, but then it's a different model. It's a B2B wholesale marketplace, and our competitive advantages are the visibility of fair wages suppliers that we are talking about, review and ratings of manufacturers which we want to build on blockchain. And fun fact, we are also dealing with fair wages suppliers or manufacturers of tea and coffee. Like none of these other startups are into it. Our team is international, has domain knowledge. Both the co-founders are hustlers and have built marketplaces earlier. Nazeeb, my co-founder, is the product guy and is an engineer from IIT Bombay. First investors are themselves B2B founders and have raised in millions. We are also endorsed by LSE.
Time's up. No worries. You did a great job.
So my internet was fluctuating, so I got a little nervous because I thought like either my video went off or the thing went off, or I don't know. So sorry.
You did a great job. Just finish it. What's your ask? What are you raising and for what?
Yeah, so I'm raising 750K GBP, and that's predominantly for user retention and activity. So basically hiring better developers so that we can maintain the user retention and activities, and then can start working on the development of our ratings and reviews on blockchain. And also we want to hire one customer success person from Q4, and so that we have a runway of like around at least 18 to 20 months from the time we are raising, like from the date we close this in our bank.
Understood.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to welcome back the other investors in here to ask questions. My first question for you would be, you said you've got 5,000 suppliers already on and actively using the platform. Did I get that right?
Not like actively in the platform. So platform is still like an MVP. So they are active. They're not active on the platform. They're there on the platform, but then we are maintaining them in our other channels. Like for example, we have this Discord and everywhere where sort of if there's any buy request which comes by, we go to them and we tell them, because we just have the MVP. It's not a fully functional site where transaction can happen at the moment. I mean, we don't have the full-fledged launch yet that has happened in the market. So it's still an MVP sort of a thing.
How do you see yourself in competition with Alibaba and the big players? Couldn't they just add some of this same type of information in terms of sustainability, fair labor pricing, etc.?
Yeah, but Alibaba is mostly, so they are not doing, say, how do I put it? So it's like a wholesale or a manufacturing, it's more like a wholesale marketplace where you have, if you look at Alibaba, for example, you have 30% of the sellers on Alibaba are the extremely bigger ones, like extremely huge sellers which are dominating the market. And that's what the scene is everywhere. In fact, in most of the marketplaces, like the bigger ones. In our case, we are dealing with brands which are looking to manufacture their products, not just buying in wholesale. So we are dealing with that. B, we are dealing with the sellers who are primarily SMEs in nature. And 70% are SMEs in this sector. But then if you look at it, as I said, like most of the online marketplaces are dominated by 30% because they have the money. So in Alibaba, if you want to create a profile and sell it, you have to pay $2,000. And the kind of SMEs which are predominant in the sector, they do not want to pay so much money just to get leads, which might happen, might not happen. That's the marketplace model. B, in our case, we are creating an efficient supply chain models. For example, right now, if you see, nobody has as such ratings and reviews of the manufacturers given by the buyers. So most of the marketplaces that you are looking at, be it IndiaMart and Alibaba, these are into buying and selling of wholesale and lead generation and so on and so forth. Like these guys are not doing the supply chain efficiency yet. There are some startups which have come up in this. So they are trying to do a combination of wholesale and supply chain efficiency. There's one called Powered by People, which is in Boston right now. They're in Kenya. I think they have raised recently $5 million or something insane. So there are some of these startups which are slowly coming up into this picture, and then trying to ensure the bottlenecks are removed and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, that's I would say a plus point, because Alibaba and all the other firms, they are not dealing with SMEs because it's very difficult to work with SMEs. It's very difficult to get into when they're getting business from huge sellers. Why would they want to get into SMEs? Maybe because, I don't know, that's how probably it works with them. So yeah.
But you said your business model was to later on offer a premium version to higher end suppliers?
No, like we are not providing premium offers to higher end suppliers. It's mostly for like SME and fair wages suppliers. So by fair wages, we mean, for example, we are dealing with, like, let's say there's a supplier in Bangladesh, which is making jute products and then also selling jute fabric. And they also take made to orders from brands which are looking to produce their own, you have this white label thing. So they do this for different brands. So it's a small, like if I define the target user, then it's something which is its turnover is much less than 500,000 GBP, let's say. And it's mainly working with self-help groups of women. And so these are the kind of SMEs, or like these are the kind of manufacturers we are trying to work with. And the kind of subscription which we have for the sellers is the reason why we are keeping it at very low at the moment. And we want to keep test it with just $25. So we are not dealing with premium suppliers or like suppliers who already have everything in place, because the industry is very crippled, and B, it's very dirty for that matter. So the ones who have all the money, they have all the visibility to tamper the reviews, to tamper their ratings, to get all the businesses. But one has to understand there's a whole potential of like huge base of manufacturers and SMEs.
The long tail.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have that avenues, they don't have visibility, and they are doing good work. They have good businesses, they have good codes of conduct, but they are not getting that reach or like the businesses, like the sales. And these are the guys which need like amplification, and there are also a lot of middlemen which sort of exploit the channels. So we are trying to remove those barriers.
Awesome. Thanks. Ricardo, do you have any questions?
Let me unmute myself first. Sorry. So hi, Paulami. Thanks for the pitch. It was very good, although you didn't reach the end. Anyway, my main question is how do you do the assessment? What's underneath this stuff? So I have an SME. I would hire you guys. What would happen then?
Okay, so the thing is that even if you're an SME, we first check like if you're the right sort of a supplier for our platform, because we are looking at certain things. We are looking at the fact that who you're working with. Are you working with a lot of contract laborers, or what kind of laborers are you working with? What are your conditions? So we sort of ask you for certain certifications, like say WFT of Fair Trade Organization, or there's something app, and so on and so forth. But then we also understand, since you're an SME, some of you do not have so many additional certifications probably in place, which where the problem comes, because we understand that you're looking at ROI, return on investment, and these certifications and paying for them are huge. Already COVID has happened. You are looking for more sales. We completely understand. At that time, what we do, we ask you for other sort of proof. Like, for example, you have to give us, how you're paying to your laborers, like ISO and so on and so forth. Like whatever you have, you give it to us, and then we kind of try and understand where you are falling under. So right now we are not, so, and we also ask for your turnover and workforce. So if you are extremely small, which is extremely a micro sort of sort of an SME or a manufacturer with, like, let's say your turnover is like hardly 50 GBP, 50,000 GBP or something, we are right now not dealing with you as a supplier, or because we also have to think about the business. We also have to, because we're also establishing ourselves. So we are sort of not dealing with extremely micro ones, because we know that at this stage we won't be able to create an impact, because you also have humongous credit problem, which is and you won't be able to even deliver the orders which had happened to us. So even if you're giving you an order, you have that credit problem, you have the workforce problem. And as a startup, we won't be able to solve everything right away for you at this stage. So we're dealing with, let's say, anybody at least who has around 500K GBP plus minus 100, 200 to at least 750K. We can deal with you. We will look at certain things, and then we sort of verify at the moment. One of the bottlenecks or one of the challenges which we are facing is that we are doing the verification by ourselves. But then since we feel there's a huge opportunity here, and over a period of time, we can also monetize on verification either from our end, or we sort of partner with USAID or GmbH and sort of like amplify it. So it's like, say, for example, how Shopify is, but then we sort of help small businesses verify them and monetize them, and also charge a monthly subscription from them, which is something which we can do in the future. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And then Sven or Madeline, do you have a question to add?
Sure.
Maddie,
go first.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little bit lost. I think I'm a little bit lost, and I'm wondering, and I think it's because you have some very clear gusto and also very big vision, right? So I'm sort of like been kind of like following along. Okay, I'm a little bit curious, if we zoom out right now, actually zoom in right now, what is maybe the biggest, I guess you could call it, what's the biggest milestone that you're working towards in the next 3 months? And where do you think is sort of the biggest barrier to achieve that?
So next 3 months, the plan is to definitely go ahead with the launch and to ensure that the ratings and reviews start coming onto the platform. So what happens sometimes, I wouldn't say that's like a huge barrier as such we have at this point in time, but then I would say that what happens sometimes, a lot of buyers, since we are new in the market, we have to push, I think, a bit more on marketing. We have been mostly doing it organically. So what happens, buyers are interested, like they are coming to us and they have found us organically and they are trying to connect with the manufacturers, but when it comes to like giving a rating or review as such, some of them are faltering back. So we have to ensure the UX becomes better so that, you know, the thing happens right on the platform. So for that, I think we have to definitely work a lot better on the product part, and we have to ensure that we sort of release the features fast and we get, I think, better developers, because we did a lot of cost cutting on that, and that sort of delayed the process a bit, which usually happens in startups. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. So that's something which is going on. Otherwise, supplier base is there. I mean, we have like around 100,000 supplier base. So that's not one of the problems. And some of the suppliers are also buying from some of the suppliers in the platform. Like it's two ways, because some of them need certain things which they don't have. So it's sort of pretty much organically happening at the moment.
Awesome. Thanks, Pulumi. I want to move on now to make sure all of our startups get a chance to present. Thanks so much for sharing what you guys are doing with Bomway. And next up, I want to call Tolga into the tank. Tolga, you are up. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with wiCow when it comes to saving cows. Pretty cool.
Hello, everybody. This is Tolga from Germany. Just a second. Yeah, I'm the co-founder and the CTO of the company. wiCow is using the artificial intelligence and the machine learning to help the healthy and the happy cows for the farmers. And why the farmers require this kind of technology? Because there is a blind for the farmers because they don't see any of the cows. Is there any progress or other kind of thing? So, and most of the IoT sensors in the market really focusing on the estrus period of the animal. But there is a big loss because of the dry period tracking, prepartum, calving itself, and the postpartum. And these untracking sessions have some consequences as a result, and too much animal death in the world. And there's around 70 billion euro of losses globally in 2020. So if we also catch this money and this amount of animal, maybe we are going to stop the hunger in the Africa. So what the wiCow is doing, wiCow is tracking the whole required period of the animal, including the other parts. And also, what is the result of this? We can also reduce the calving interval, which is really important for the farmers, because this is also meaning amount of money and also amount of health consequences will be provided. And also calf death will be reduced, and the mother cow death is also even zero. We didn't lose any mother cow that already used our sensor. And as a result, extra gain for our farmers in the meantime. We are real devices and we are in the market for a few years, but when we start our first tracking in Germany after the corona pandemic started, nowadays is better than before. What is the secret of the devices? We have a really high accuracy sensor inside the T-Sense. T-Sense is an intravaginal sensor, and it is also collecting some vibration and also temperature, exact temperature of the body, and some of other sensor is also including secret, and sending the data to the cloud, and the progress is also happen, and cow is learning, and also farm is learning, and also region is learning, and after that we can also prevent the cow healthy to the some feverish diseases and also even that. And we already finished almost 6,000 of calving and 20,000 of animal health tracking. Only the calving is also saved the 800 cows there, and also 200 mother cows because of the difficult calf birth and also some of the health consequences. So we already saved 700,000 euro with the 750 units deployed in the market. What is the difference of the wiCow? wiCow is also tracking the health issue, even if they also using, and you can use the devices, you can clean it and use it again. What is the market? Market is really focusing on the heat and only calving. We also track the period of the prepartum and the postpartum, so prevent some secret problem. And also, there is another problem in the world, and there is a transportation risk. And there is no devices tracking in the truck and also tracking in the ship. There is almost 20% or 25% of loss in the ship, and also 15% of loss in the truck. So we can also reduce this transportation, and also we reduce the carbon emission in the world. And our core team is this, and we have also veterinary doctor. We have also great business development manager and also industrial designer. We already got the European Product Design Award last year. And what is the sales model? We can also give too much options for our customer. They can also rent the devices. They can also try for 3 months just for the calvings, and also they can also want to buy by purchasing. And our aim to sell the devices all around Europe. There's a 60 million of cattle in the Europe, and we already sell our devices Italy, and also Denmark, Germany, and also Turkey as well. And we want to sell the 100,000 of units in 5 years, and we want 3 million annual recursive revenue via system sales and servicing. To make this, we are raising, and 1.5 million euro is required. We are using this money, especially for the sales agent investment, and also making project development together with the university. And get in touch with us. We are waiting for the money to make our success between the sales.
Awesome. Thanks for presenting, Tolga. It's an incredible company, a great pitch. One quick piece of feedback. I would get into the problem faster. Yeah, you were very technical from the start, and I think you're solving a huge problem, but a lot of people probably aren't familiar with what the problem is. In terms of thoughts that I have about the company or questions I have, the biggest one is you mentioned the competitors, and you mentioned there are other people into the space and that they're involved in different aspects, but you didn't really get into what makes you unique and stand out, why farmers would choose you over another solution.
Yeah, the most of the IoT sensor in the market is really focusing on only the estrus period and try to make the cow getting pregnant again. But there is a secret diseases is behind the after calving and the before calving. So there is no devices for the continuous tracking in the body temperature and including the uterus contractility. The uterus contractility gives us too much information about the pregnancy difficulties. If you use the devices, even if you have a devices in the market, for example, some of the Nexus devices or ear-tech, you didn't see the body temperature, right? You didn't see the secret problem inside the animal. We have shown this, and we have farmers and the health management have a chance to fix it. So after then the pregnancy and also even if the lactation period will be better. So you can get much more milk, you can get much more calf, and also even if you have a healthy herd. So you don't lose any calf, especially as a bonus.
And what's your story? How do you get into cow birthing as a profession?
My granddad is also farmer when I was a child, and I'm really familiar about the animal, but our farm is like Alibaba farms. We have also donkey, horse, especially cow, and also sheep. And even in the night shift, my grandmother is also waiting for the calving. And I remember that why the veterinary is not coming to our village. So we lost some animals, and also I have a chance to work at a Dutch company. The name is the Lely, is also a big corporation, and I have a chance to make the big innovation for them. So after that, I have a chance to recognize working together with the animal. So the behind of the idea is coming from there.
Okay, thanks. I just was curious. It's not your everyday deal, but apparently it's kind of the world you grew up on. I want to make sure the other investors have a chance to chime in as well. Madeline, Ricardo, Sven, questions for Tolga?
Absolutely.
Oh, go for it.
Thank you. First of all, on those metrics you mentioned, Tolga, I'd be curious to know what the sample size was. And second question to follow up, what sort of barriers to adoption do you see for farmers? How difficult is it to educate the users of this product to actually use it correctly?
Yeah, I'm answering for the second question. It is really easy to use because some of the other company already developed something for the intravaginal devices, not for the sensor. So they are really used to use this as a synchronization and the hormone usage for the animal. So when we introduce our sensor, it will take almost 10 minutes to understand how it will be using in the animal. So, but I lost the first question. Can you go?
The metrics you mentioned in the beginning, what's the sample size there? How many cows did you test this on?
So for the size is also almost fit inside the animal body and also around the 12 centimeter length.
Just to double click on that, he means how many cows have you deployed it on in terms of the stats? What are the stats based off of for number of cows? In terms of the reduction in the deaths.
Okay, so it is also, for example, if you have 100 cows, you're going to buy 20 devices and repeatedly use the devices. And when you track all the animals, you can also catch the all calvings and also you can catch the all health. So it means you can use the devices repeatedly for cleaning itself and after then use it again. So you can catch whole herd size and you also reduce the calf death problem and also especially cow death problem.
Got it. Yeah. how do you know that the birthing rate or the birthing death rate goes from 6% to 1%? What are you basing that on?
Yeah, we have too much showcase about that. We have already used our sensor almost 10,000 times before in commercial. So especially when the farmers, all of our test farm is also reporting to us, and especially the difficult cow birth rate is almost 7% all around the world, according to the papers and also with our experience.
Thank you.
Madeline or Ricardo?
Madeline, you have priority. You started talking before me.
Thank you. No, I'm just thinking a little bit about, I mean, sort of putting my venture cap on how big this can get. I mean, of course, it's a huge industry with a huge impact and footprint on the planet. What to you, when you think about sort of what you're building to with wiCow, what does big mean to you, maybe in terms of number, in terms of scale?
Yeah, well, because there is for example, in the European side, it is difficult to track the cows by the farmers because the farmers is really alone in Europe. But if you look at the Eastern country and the other rest of the world, there's even of the most of the cow is not tracking, and too much animal death is also facing. And it means they will also take more animals from the Europe to other countries or North America to the other countries. There's a too big carbon emission depending on the transportation. So when we develop the devices just for the calving, but we understand too much health consequences can be prevented with these devices. So after that, I changed my mind to introduce my devices, not only for the calving, it is also giving too much information about the health issue of the cow. If the cow living life is a little bit more, you don't have to push the herd size is bigger and bigger. So if the efficiency is okay, the carbon emission may be the acceptable for the animal.
And may I ask what scale do you need in terms of the amount of cows, or for example, fertilizations do you need in order to really move the needle?
So I don't understand. Sorry, can you repeat it? I didn't hear.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious in terms of how many do you think cows you need to ultimately cover, or herds, in order to
as for the scale up, you mean?
Move the needle, yeah.
Yeah, for example, there is almost 1 billion of animals in the world just for the cows. So if we are going to penetrate our sensor, even if the 2%, it is enough to scale up, because there is a big loss and also there is a prevention. So and this is the only devices tracking this period in the world. So and also we get the patent of the devices and also patent of the software. And also we have so last month we also first sell to the United States. There's almost 100 million of cattle. So it is not a small sell for us, because we already sell the devices to Holstein, USA. So it is our to the point selling, and we have a chance to spread out all around North America maybe. And we can also have a chance to prevent calf death, and also even if the mother cow death, especially.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys, for Tolga?
Just a quick one. You briefly showed your pricing model. You had like 3 ways of pricing this stuff for 3 months. I didn't quite get it. Are you charging per cow? How does that work? Well, what's the cost of this if somebody decides to use you guys?
Yeah, for the return of investment calculation, we are selling the one sensor for 360 euro. We are calculating this model according to difficult calf birth and the correct time of the insemination. And after that, when you purchase, for example, if you want to buy 20 devices, the amount of the cost is almost 7,200 euro. But if you want to buy, for example, simulation, we are selling the one sensor for 360 euro. We are calculating this. I hurt myself.
Lami needs to mute herself.
Time of insemination. And after that, when you purchase, for example, if you want to buy 20 devices, the amount of someone is open the
yeah. So somebody has this going on at the same time.
If you want
I'm not sure if it's you or totally you. I think it's you.
So the model is also a little bit simple. If you want to buy, it is also quantity dependent. If you want to buy 100 devices, for example, we are going to drop down the price level. And for the renting option, we are also asking for the yearly payment. And when you pay the real yearly payment, we are going to give the whole guarantee to our customer. This is also for 100 euro per year for per sensor. And the receiver system is also, our company is also owner of the receiver. But if there's a problem, we are going to give the new sensor or the new devices to the farmers for the renting option. The other option, the third one, it is a little bit quick. This one is also developing for the UK market, because in the UK, the whole calling is also finishing in 2 months, in the December and the January, and after then you couldn't see. And we also asked to potential customer, you can also rent the devices for 7,500 euro. This is also 3 different special selling option, and we also looking for a strong distributor to selling the devices. We don't want to sell the devices by ourselves. And Ralph already say there is a channel, as the Rafi say. So there is a channel according to. So we also enter this channel because it is difficult to getting the trust from the farmers. So we are using the same method to spread out our system, and we give the whole option to our potential distributor and also potential customer. I'm not sure it is clear for you.
Thank you.
It's all good. Thanks for presenting, Tolga. Thanks for sharing what you're doing with wiCow. Super interesting company that a ton of potential. I actually had an article I was working on today about how transition technologies are still a big deal and why we still need to be working on reducing meat emissions, not just going straight to vegan and other solutions. I think the transition technologies are incredibly important too, and this is definitely one of those. I want to move on to our last startup now of the night. This is another Carbon-13 company, just like Frankie with Food Squared. We have Jonathan Bean. Jonathan is here with Materials Nexus, and he's going to tell you a little bit more. Can you turn your, there we go. Jonathan, you are on, and you are on the clock. Sound good?
Thank you very much, Matt, for the invitation. And so sustainability means many different things to many different types of people. But in many cases, the solution boils down to the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. What Materials Nexus is doing is to invent the 4th R, what we call re-engineer. And we are re-engineering many, many products around the world economy in order to accelerate the transition towards net zero materials. And so, you know, where this problem comes from is that it takes an extremely long time and extremely lot of money to invent new materials which are more optimized than previous examples. And this means that corporates in most cases don't engage with this particular system and is left down to, in most cases, universities. In the same way, this is true for the drug discovery industry, where it takes an awful lot of money to take new drugs to market. We are accelerating that process. One of the reasons as to why it's really, really slow is that the process for development of new materials relies on a trial and error process, which means that you may make many, many examples of a given device or material before you actually get to success. And this is epitomized by Thomas Edison, who famously said that it took him 10,000 ways to successfully invent the light bulb. And so what is our solution? Our solution is a range of different technologies which we've combined in order to accelerate the whole end-to-end materials discovery and optimization process. And this ranges from artificial intelligence technologies, which enables you to predict material properties and find and screen different combinations. This is very valuable because you can remove certain materials which may come from conflict zones, and so therefore enhancing supply chain security. And it enables you to increase product performance, so you can potentially lightweight further electric vehicles, which means that you can get more range, or if it's an internal combustion engine, less emissions from the less weight. After we've performed this screening, we then perform a limited number of laboratory tests. We can then file intellectual property and then move towards licensing of manufacturing. And so, our ambition when compared to the status quo is to do this whole process in 2 years as opposed to 20 years. The team comprises myself. I've got over 10 years experience in the field of material science, along with advising a number of startups, including as a role of CFO. I've also helped out on the Royal Academy of Engineering program, the LIFT program, and a number of other programs from the Judge Business School in Cambridge. There's Robert Forrest, who has won numerous awards in programming and has a master's in scientific computing from Cambridge, and successfully been awarded a number of projects from the research point of view. John Pillau, he's got over 45 patents to his name and is very experienced in the materials domain and has been involved as principal scientist in a number of UK materials-based companies. And finally, Nick Sturck, MBE, has a commercial acumen which backs up the scientific team in order to enable us to sell our product and to find the customers. He's also a fellow of the Institute of Directors and graduate of Stanford. In terms of our traction to date, we've successfully raised from a number of accelerators and angel investors. We have done a number of other sort of rounds in the sort of recent days, and so we've got some money on the table there. We've also, last week, we participated in a UK government trade mission to Sweden, where we got the opportunity to visit lots of the different aerospace companies in Sweden, which was an amazing opportunity to work out where we can potentially use this technology to aid electric flight and hydrogen flight. We've received some money from the government, from the Department for Transport, and this enables us to actually start to create more intellectual property and demonstrators from our technology. And finally, we've secured POCs with some of the biggest companies in the world, and we have a significant pipeline to deliver additional POCs, which will convert into annually recurring revenue in the future. And so really our mission and what we believe for the vision for the future is that we believe in the future 2030, 2040, every single corporate will be using net zero materials enabled by Materials Nexus. And thank you for listening. Happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thanks for the pitch, Jonathan. The first quick question I had for you, you mentioned that IP was part of your strategy, and the more projects that you did, the more IP you would accrue. Are you doing these as are corporations contracting out with you and then you get to keep the IP?
So there's of course a number of different models which we could pursue. So one is that we could just sell part of the software platform to the corporates, which would enable them to gain access to the technology we developed. And the other is to work in partnership with other corporates, which will essentially enable a kind of joint development of IP. And so this is the kind of section I'm talking about. And the reason why we can do that is because, as you're sort of rightly hinting, is that some corporates would like ownership of their IP, which is perfectly acceptable in our business. It's just that we, for particular corporates, are not interested at all in the IP. So say if you're a large distribution company or a large kind of publishing house, what you're interested in is the result rather than the IP which is generated from the contract. And so that's how we can balance the two sides of the equation.
When you're dealing with corporates, there's usually a lot of hand-holding and customization that goes into each project. How do you foresee scaling something like this?
So we only take on projects which are, in terms of the IP generation, which generate a significant amount of revenue from that particular project. So we will not do a small number of projects because there's not significant revenue generating potential for those things. In the case where there is a lot of customization. We will essentially rent the platform to corporates, and they'll use that internally as a kind of software as a service platform to enable them to do the things they would like to do.
Awesome, thanks. You guys, other questions for Jonathan?
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you, Jonathan. I enjoyed listening to you. Maybe just to make this whole thing a bit more tangible, could you just explain, maybe using one specific example, what actually happens? I mean, what's the data input, what's the data output, and how does this translate to the real world?
Sure, so I can talk about the government project. So we awarded funding from the Department for Transport, and the aim of that particular project is to develop a new material which enables you to have reduced friction between one surface and another. And although it's not our ambition necessarily to form this into a commercial project, it's kind of a demonstrator, a showcase, kind of marketing, as it were, to kind of show people the power of what we're doing. So the input basically is what is the materials which go into the particular coating, and then the output is essentially the performance. So how non-stick is it to a particular surface? And so, you know, it's for example, you might have a surface which is silicon dioxide. You might have other complicated surfaces like octyl groups on top of those surfaces. So it's the materials chemistry which goes into the input, and then the output is the performance of that that particular coating in application.
Okay, so the corporate, they'll give you the composition of the material, and then what you do is you model how this material acts under different scenarios, and what happens then? Do you give recommendations on how to change it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we can change the formulations and what are the different inputs, and then directly correlate those to the outputs, and then this can then potentially be patented.
And what other data inputs flow into your modeling?
So those are the only data inputs.
That's
but
it?
I guess there's a lot of know-how associated with how we actually use that data and perform these machine learning and modeling pipelines.
Okay.
And so, you know, this is the culmination of about 5 years of mine and my previous PhD students' work.
Cool. Thank you.
I can go next. Hey, thanks for the pitch. Sven, thanks for the question. That was my first question, effectively. I wanted to understand exactly what this does. So, and how spot on is this stuff? Is it 100% sure every time you do, every time a test is done through your platform?
So
how accurate you know it is, and how can you know that? How do you evaluate that accuracy?
Yeah, sure. So it does depend on the property you're trying to measure, but I had a conversation with an engineer who uses the kind of traditional approaches of these things, and they usually say they get about 60% of the way there in terms of their sort of prediction of what they think happens, and we actually believe we can get to sort of 90-95% of the way there. So, you know, typical error that we would find might be kind of 5% of that order for most properties. But really, the error is maybe not the thing that's kind of the limiting factor. The limiting factor is what's the delta between different compositions. And so even if the error is wrong, that delta is a thing that's going to be significantly more accuracy. And so it might be 0.1%, something like that. So even if we're not bang on the actual property prediction, we'll be bang on and say, actually, that one's going to perform better than that one. And so that's the thing that you can use to drive the process.
Okay, that makes sense. Just another one. What's your go-to-market strategy? Do you have any specific industries that you're targeting? What's the plan here?
So we've had a number of discussions with many different types of corporates, and I think there's many markets which this has application. We think the most near-term one is around the sort of chemicals industry. So think big companies which are producing catalysts, or large companies which are producing volumes of particular chemicals in the US, think like Dow Chemical, things like this. Then there's also a market in automotive and aerospace.
Thanks.
Can you give me a feeling or some information to understand kind of the velocity that's possible here. So for example, just even making the sale to one of the partners that might be using it, and then in their actual sort of time to value and time to market.
So it's pretty typical in terms of getting to sort of yes, between 2 and 3 months kind of time from initial discussion. Then evaluation period might be something like 3 months, but you could probably make it shorter, maybe 2 months. And then, so that's sort of time to value. And then after that, you can essentially license the software to the customer. So, it's reasonably quick within a year. If you're doing more on the IP development, our prediction is 2 years to get towards revenue, and then it ramp after that. But given the markets which we're targeting, every single one is over 10 billion in size, and so it's sort of worthwhile the investment in terms of the weight, while in the meantime we're kind of building up the SaaS side of things.
Do we have time for another question?
Go for it, Sven.
Cool. I'd love to get your take on the impact side of things. Because you mentioned, you recommend changes or you sort of model different scenarios. Out of the changes that the corporates then make to their materials, have you ever looked at how this translates to, I don't know, reduction of materials used or reduction of CO2 footprint or water usage, any sort of impact KPIs?
Yes, so one of the projects which we did on the lead up to sort of spinning out the company was to make an assessment on something like the effect of electric vehicles to the market on the copper supply chain. And so when you look at that, what you realize is that, of course, electric vehicles have a benefit in the fact they're not emitting CO2, but they have a deficit in the fact that there's increased copper usage. And so actually what you can do as a kind of first pass is just make an assessment as to where the most impact comes from in a particular product. So in a car, it's because of the CO2 emissions. That's by far the biggest contribution. In a building, it's going to be mostly the steel and concrete which go into the construction. And so once you've isolated what is the main contribution towards CO2, you can understand then what the impact is going to be. But I think sort of where you're going is exactly where we're going, is that we're also planning on automating all that process in order to understand impacts of particular different elements from certain areas in the world to minimize that impact. But in most cases, it's not a significant contribution. It's more of a fringe contribution.
Anyone else? Anyone else have questions for Jonathan? Well, then I guess that wraps up the presentations for the night. Jonathan, thanks so much for presenting, sharing what you guys are doing with Cool Beans. Now we're going to take a quick pause to let all of our investors come back onto the panel. Everybody have a little bit of a think in terms of the startups that we've seen tonight. And we're going to weigh in, vote, give some feedbacks and overall critique on our favorites and overall startup of the night. In case you need a little bit of thinking time, again, this is the Startup Tank brought to you by Forward VC, our angel syndicate focused on pre-seed and seed stage companies, climate and impact, moving the world forward and making it a better place. I think all of the companies here would certainly apply in terms of companies that we would like to see succeed and could change the world if they do. If you want to learn more about what we do, forward.vc, the number forward.vc, invested in companies that move the world forward. And now we're going to move on to the presentation, our trophy of the night, so to speak, in terms of favorite startup of the night. Do we have any takers in terms of going first, or should I do that?
What is the, do we have a voting mechanism, or do we all just sort of raise our hand and say, this is who I liked?
You can just go through your favorite two, possibly three companies of why you like them, a little bit of feedback, and then who your favorite is, or who you'd be the most likely to invest in.
I'm happy to start, actually.
Yeah, we'll let you kick it off. You had the question.
Yeah, I would love to give some kudos to, I think, Rafi, is it always by your name? I think you definitely made me feel I need to get off my ass and learn something about fertilizers, which is, it's good, right? I think to create that sort of momentum and sense of urgency around these topics that are urgent, particularly from an investor who's unfamiliar with it and generally hasn't invested too much in sort of the agricultural space. So I think your presentation and an ability to sort of communicate what's broken and the potential there was very strong. I think, Frankie, I had a very high level of trust in anything that you would or will build. I have to say, I am a software and marketplace investor, so I have to say, Jonathan, I'd probably be hitting you up more on the investment side. I think there's also something, I've looked a lot into materials and new materials, so that's also something I think I'm a little bit more primed to. And what else can I say? And Pulami, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do really appreciate what you are building, and I can definitely sympathize with the idea of a time ticking, but you did lose me a little bit along the way. I think that maybe saying half of what you said, or saying 2 bullet points rather than 10 bullet points, will be more effective ultimately in helping sort of communicate your vision and bringing me along for the ride. But I definitely know that there is a ride that you're on, right? So you did a good job at kind of, I mean, I don't doubt your dedication by any means. I don't want to monopolize the stage here, so I'll
No worries. Sven, Ricardo?
Sure. Let me say a couple things, and I mean, I won't repeat the things that Maddie has mentioned, because I agree. Kick things off just with just tag along with the feedback from Rafi, and I mentioned this, problem super clear, and how this connects to the solution was laid out very clearly. So that's a very important thing to hear as an investor in the first conversation. So well done on that one, and clearly, having done just a little bit of research in the Agtech market as well, it's a growing problem. There's multiple drivers, driving the customer need for solutions that save you on fertilizer. So there's definitely a real opportunity to be chased there. I think the same thing goes for food squared earth, right? I mean, alternative proteins, and this is a huge opportunity that's coming up in Western Europe and North America, at least. On the flip side of that, and I think this is an interesting challenge maybe for the folks for Tolga and wiCow. Beef and cattle and dairy is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's a declining market. I mean, I'm sure it's huge, but it's also in decline, and which doesn't necessarily mean sort of must not mean anything for your business, but I think it's important to address that, at least in the first conversation you have. And yeah, on to Ricardo, I'll leave a couple ones for you to chat about.
Just as a follow-up to that, it's actually not in decline. It just feels like it because you're in the impact space. I'm actually doing a blog post about this now. It's actually still definitely on the rise, global populations wise.
Wow. Okay. See, it's good to get me out of this impact bubble every now and then.
So I'll first of all, thanks for the great session. Matt, we need a coffee break in the middle of this stuff.
Yes, we do, but it's 8 o'clock and none of us will sleep then.
It's too long.
I agree. It was quite something.
But anyway, I'll have to play with Sven and Madeline. That's Rafi, you were super clear. You're a great salesman, so that helps. But the idea was super clear. The pitch was super clear. Your roadmap is also super clear. You're probably also the one raising more money, actually, which means that you're on a later stage than everybody else.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was great to hear you. Square Food, I would say, congratulations. I think you really have something there, and there's space for you. I think it is good. The pitch is good. I like the project. It's something I could look into. I'm very much into Agtech. I like Agtech. I've been in agriculture myself, and I've been thinking of going back to agriculture someday in my life. So I always have a soft spot for something like Voltiris, for example. So it was good. I'm not very clear on your revenue model yet, and I'm not really clear on your cost, but I think you are very much in the beginning. Material Nexus, I don't really see the impact of this stuff, and this is kind of a climate tech thing, and to be honest, I think the product may be amazing and it sounds really good. I don't see where the climate tech plays on this stuff. So that's why I left it a little bit on the side. wiCow, it may not be a declining market, but it is a non-climate friendly market. You may argue that having a less negative impact is having an impact, but it's not climate tech. So although I think it may be a good business, I don't see it as climate tech also, or affecting climate tech. The same stuff for Bomway. It's an impact business, but it's a whole different thing. I think it makes sense that looking at not really SMEs or small SMEs, and I think you do have space there, what you're doing, but again, the impact, without it, and I think I've went through all of them, right? And that's it.
I think you did. I think that's some great feedback for all of our companies. Hopefully everyone that's presented has learned a fair bit. I would say for me and myself personally, my favorites of the presenters would probably be Dots, Food Squared, and Voltiris. Not necessarily in that order. I loved all three. Is there a consensus on who our startup of the night is? What do you guys think? If you had to put one vote out there, who are you putting out there?
I will be voting for Dots.
Dots it is from me as well.
Yeah, let's do the same. Let's handle the price to the salesman.
Yes.
Good
job, guys. I've
Congratulations,
learned a lot about a lot of things that I didn't know too much about, and that's really great.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
And if you guys are interested in this and learning more, our syndicate's actually been working pretty closely with Dots. We're pretty interested in that as well. You can find out more, but I can't tell you about that more. But if you go to forwardvc.vc/syndicate, then you can learn a little bit more about us, what we do, and how we work with incredible companies like Dots who are changing the world. All the founders, thanks so much for presenting. Thanks for sharing your baby. I know it's incredibly hard and challenging. Thanks for all of the investors for coming on and providing incredible feedback. And thanks to any of the viewers who tuned in. One last time, this has all been presented to you as all of season 1 of the Startup Tank is by Leva. Leva, the best way to set up an SPV fast. It's digital. You do it without lawyers. You can set up secondaries, follow-on funding, and deploy serious capital into businesses, all without having to have tens of thousands in paperwork. Fast, easy. I absolutely recommend it for syndicate leads or for founders that are wanting to do a friends and family round and make it a little easier. Forward.vc/Leva, LEVA, for more details, and to get just tell them Matt sent you and you'll get a special deal. Yeah, and until next time, thestartuptank.com if you want to apply, learn more, or tune into any of our future sessions. Cheers, and thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night.
Awesome.
And you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.